Thanks for joining us on the program, everyone. I'm Joke Rogers. Here's what's coming up within the half hour. U.S. President Donald Trump shares his thoughts on the U.K. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's visit to China. And ahead of President Trump's visit to China, also in April this year, the government says it's willing to work with Washington. Plus, the UAE urges political solution to avoiding conflict with Iran. Let's begin the world today. U.S. President Donald Trump says it's very dangerous for the UK to deal with China. In his reaction of the Prime Minister's visit to the country to reset relations, he was also reacting to agreements made between Mr. Starmer and President Xi Jinping aimed at increasing business and investment between the two countries. Mr. Trump made the remark while he attended the premiere of a documentary about his wife, Melania, when asked by reporters what he thought of Britain increasing business ties with China. Responding to Mr. Trump's remarks, the UK government said it had informed Washington about the visit to China in advance. They also informed the President Trump himself will be in China in April.
What do you think about the UK getting into business with China? Keir Starmer was in Beijing.
Well, it's very dangerous for them to do that, and it's even more dangerous, I think, for Canada to get into business with China. Canada is not doing well. They're doing very poorly, and you can't look at China as the answer. I know China very well. I know President Xi's a friend of mine. I know him very well, but that's a big hurdle to go over when you get Canada. The first thing they're going to do is say you're not allowed to play ice hockey anymore. That's not good. Canada's not going to like it.
President Trump also talking about what he thought about Canada and China relations. Well, talking more about the UK Prime Minister's visit to China, it was Mr. Starmer's first visit to the country in 8 years. Mr. Starmer and Chinese President Xi Jinping held productive meetings with real concrete outcomes, some of which are that the two nations had agreed on reducing tariffs on whiskey, visa-free travel to China for under 30 days, information exchange and cooperation on irregular migration, focusing particularly on small boats and engine parts used to smuggle gangs. Mr. Starmer will next visit Shanghai to conclude his 3-day trip and sees a welcome break for the Prime Minister after rumors of a number of leadership challenges back home. The visit comes following similar moves by Finland, Canada and France, and just a week after the US threatened more tariffs on the UK and others in the huge row over Greenland. Also somewhat ostracized from the EU following Brexit, Mr. Starmer has appeared keen to pivot to the east. However, the last few months have seen UK allegations of Chinese spies, interference, security threats, and a row over a new embassy. Let's get more on this. Joining us now is international affairs expert Dr. Tarela Ike, who joins us from London. Thank you. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm currently at Middlesbrough at the moment here in the UK. Thank you.
Right. First, it was the Canadian Prime Minister who was in China last week. This time, it's the UK Prime Minister. Why do you think China is being courted now?
Well, thank you for that question. I think it's more to do with fostering trade and economic relationship. Because, for example, if we take the United Kingdom as the case study, we'll see that there are some economic and diplomatic benefits that is coming from this visits to China. So, for example, the UK whiskey would then have like a half tariff. So instead of the 10%, it will be cut down to 5%. And then we were saying that free movement of goods, free movement of people for up to 30 days or less than 30 days, as the case may be, where British citizens can be able to go to China without actually needing a visa for less than 30 days. And again, AstraZeneca's investment of approximately $15 billion in China, all of this is tilted towards that economic strengthening, trade gains, and also that diplomatic relationship. But that's not to also undermine the impact of the uncertainty with U.S. foreign policies globally, because what that is appearing to do is that it's to some extent pulling other countries to want to do business with China, given the uncertainty in the international order courtesy of the United States.
Right, these countries say they still have very strong ties with the United States, but then they know President Trump is not happy about the reset in relations. Does the UK really still have strong ties with the US, but is only using China as a buffer against Mr. Trump and his many threats?
I would say the UK and the United States are still strong allies, as in the relationship goes way, way back. And I don't think this is enough to sever that relationship. The UK still sees the United States as a strong ally. They work together. And that's something that I do not think will change anytime soon. So like I said initially, it's pretty much geared towards fostering that economic relationship, diplomatic relationship with China, because China is now emerging as one of the strong players in the international field. So countries are beginning to reckon with China, given the value it's bringing to the international scene. And that's partly, to my understanding, is one of the reasons why the UK is actually forging that or strengthening that relationship with China for economic gains and also to bolster that diplomatic relationship.
Right, and yesterday, Mr. Starmer announced the UK citizens will be able to travel to China visa-free for under 30 days, though. Do you think a lot of Britons will take advantage of this?
Again, this is something that is really hard to tell because it's all a matter of preference. If we look at the top 5 countries that Britons usually travel to, especially whether that's for vacation, China is not among them, but again, this can change, especially considering the fact that they now have the less than 30 days option where they can travel to China visa-free, so that, like, without needing a visa, so that might change the way in which some Britons might want to take advantage of that opportunity. But again, it's really hard to tell whether most Britons will want to go to China. Just the fact that the opportunity is there is something to really see a change in travel trend, hopefully.
Right, and President Trump himself will be in China in April, as it was announced by the White House. Do you think this differs from his other meetings with President Xi Jinping?
Not necessarily, but it does have some impact because now the UK, which is one of the United States' strong allies, is now doing business with China. So it does, in a way, shows that China is becoming an emerging, I would say, player in the international field. But I don't think it will necessarily change whatever the outcome of the meetings will be. But it's just to show that, like, strong nations are also aligning with China in business relations, diplomacy, and for economic reasons as well.
Right, we do know that, there have been several spats between China and the United States with, threats of tariffs back and forth. What has changed? Why is President Trump going to China? And, I wonder how welcoming the Chinese, environment will be for Mr. Trump because of the strains that we've noticed earlier.
I would say it's not just China. Remember, with the tariff, at some point, it was a global thing that the United States actually did in its foreign policy. So I don't think it's just China. And again, it's an opportunity to strengthen that diplomatic ties between the United States and China. And I think the Chinese as a country will make the most of it. So I don't think it's going to change anything really much, so to say. But it's just that opportunity as well for them to be able to foster that relationship between the United States and China. Yeah.
Right, and there is a realignment happening on the international scene, as we've all noticed, and the entire world has been agog about it. Will the US and UK continue to remain on top of it all, do you think?
Absolutely, I think so, because they've got a strong experience in all of this. And part of the reason I think they can is given not just their wealth of experience, but also the fact that it's something they've been doing for years, like ensuring the international liberal order, they're key players in the United Nations and things like that. And I think another way as well that they can keep on top of this is the United States actually
Oh, we seem to have a lost contact. Right. Right, we seem to have lost some connection with her. We'll come back to her to talk about that. But staying with China, the country toned down trade frictions with the United States on Thursday as Ministry of Commerce spokesperson He Yongqian stressed that Beijing was willing to continue negotiations to resolve economic differences during a press conference. She said China is willing to work with the United States to uphold and implement the important consensus reached by the two heads of state, make good use of the China-U.S. Economic Trade Consultation Mechanism, manage differences, advance cooperation, and promote the stable, healthy, and sustainable development of China-U.S. economic and trade relations. In 2025, China and the United States conducted 5 rounds of economic and trade talks, with sessions held in Geneva, London, Stockholm, Madrid, and Kuala Lumpur, under which Washington and Beijing lowered tariffs and export restrictions. The spokesperson said these talks were held in the spirit of equality, respect, and mutual benefit, achieving a series of positive outcomes. The remark comes after U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer floated the idea of another potential round of trade negotiations with China ahead of the U.S. President Trump's visit to the country in April. Mr. Greer suggested that next round could move past highly sensitive issues such as technology and China's supply of rare earth magnets, but rather on things we can trade between us that are non-sensitive. Right. Thank you for staying with us through that connection cut. I asked you, well, my final question to you was about the realignments, the global realignments, and if you think that the US and the UK are still on top of it all.
Absolutely. I think they're still, to some extent, on top of it, even though we're saying like a gradual global shift. And part of the reason I say that is because of the experience that they've got when it comes to international diplomacy globally. So another way the United States can actually stay on top of this is reaffirming to its allies its support at all times, and also strengthening U.S. diplomacy globally, because that will go a long way to build trust and enable them to stay on top of the, what I would say, a realignment that is happening within the international scene. Thank you.
Right. Thanks again.
Thank you.
And when we come back on the program. The Bull Release Festival kicks off in India. Please stay tuned when we return. Welcome back to another major issue. The U.S. president says he has told Iran that it needs to do 2 things to avoid military action by the United States. Firstly, to stop its nuclear activity, and second, to stop killing protesters. This follows weeks of pressure on Iran to negotiate a deal on its nuclear program. The country's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, said that Iranian armed forces are ready with their fingers on the trigger to immediately and powerfully respond to any aggression. Earlier this week, Mr. Trump had written on his Truth Social handle, "Hopefully, Iran will quickly come to the table and negotiate a fair and equitable deal, no nuclear weapons." He had warned that a massive armada is heading to Iran, and it was ready, willing, and able to rapidly fulfill its mission with speed and violence, if necessary. In the meantime, diplomatic advisor to the UAE President Anwar Mohammed Gargash has warned that any escalation against Iran would negatively affect stability in the Gulf region, stressing the need for political and diplomatic solutions to avoid conflict. He warns that the region cannot afford further conflict. The Gulf states will ultimately bear some of the consequences of any escalation in terms of their reputation, stability and finances. Mr. Gargash also pointed to the Gulf states' commitment not to allow their territories or facilities to be used to target Iran, adding that such an understanding requires reciprocal commitments. The comments come amid escalating regional tensions coinciding with the arrival of U.S. warships in the region and continued threats by U.S. President Donald Trump to launch an attack on Iran. Well, elsewhere, the air was filled with anticipation at the Bull Release Festival in southern India as around 300 bulls raced through the narrow, crowded streets with spectators screaming and cheering. Footage shows decorated temple bulls and the participants preparing to test their courage by attempting to grab the bulls, tame them or even stop their run. Explaining the rules, bull trainer Kavriya San says if 100 bulls run a distance of 100 meters, their times are calculated and bulls that cover the distance in the shortest time are declared the winner. In anticipation of the annual event, farmers invested substantially in providing special care to the animals to enhance their physical strength for better performance. The event is a traditional century-old rural sport popular in Tamil Nadu's district, often held during Pongal festivals. This year, around 300 bulls participated in the race. The fastest bull will receive a cash award along with other prizes such as two-wheelers and other valuables. And just before we close, we'll bring you one more story about the situation in Iran. Protesters rallied outside the French embassy in Tehran on Thursday to condemn France's stance on the recent unrest in the country. Demonstrators waved Iranian flags and held signs and images condemning U.S. President Donald Trump, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and French President Emmanuel Macron. Some protesters also held images depicting crackdowns on protests in France. Mohammed Taha, a protester, called on international organizations and European countries to refrain from interfering in Iran's internal affairs, urging them to respect the independence of countries and recognize the power of the Islamic states.
Meanwhile, U.S. Central Command says a U.S. aircraft carrier and 3 destroyers have arrived in the Middle East to, quote, promote regional security and stability. With over 80.
And that's the world today. Thank you for watching. I'm Joke Rogers.